Welcome back to UK Property Info. Today I'm investigating something that genuinely makes my blood boil when I think about the millions of people struggling to find affordable homes in this country. UK builders are sitting on land instead of building on it. They have planning permission. They have the plots. They have everything they need to construct the homes that Britain desperately requires. But they are choosing not to build. And today I'm going to explain exactly why this is happening and what it means for everyone trying to buy or rent property in this country. Before I get into the details, if you find this kind of honest property analysis valuable, please take 2 seconds to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. It costs you nothing, but it helps this channel grow and allows me to continue bringing you the truth about what is really happening in the UK property market. Now let me show you what the builders are really doing with their land. The scale of land banking in the UK is absolutely staggering when you actually look at the numbers. The major house builders in this country are collectively sitting on enough land with planning permission to build over 400,000 homes. That is not land waiting for planning approval. That is land that already has permission to build. The paperwork is done. The permissions are granted. Construction could start tomorrow if they wanted it to. But the cranes remain still. The diggers stay parked. The land sits empty while families across Britain struggle to find homes they can afford. According to the latest data, the top 10 house builders alone control land banks worth over £90 billion. £90 billion of land that could be housing families but instead sits as assets on corporate balance sheets. Some of these companies have enough land to continue building at current rates for 5, 6, even 7 years without acquiring a single additional plot. Yet housing starts have collapsed by 35% compared to what we need. The question everyone should be asking is simple. Why are they not building? The first and most significant reason builders are sitting on land is the dramatic shift in market conditions that has made building financially unattractive. Between 2021 and 2024, the economics of house building have been completely transformed. Interest rates have risen from near zero to over 5%. This affects builders in multiple ways that most people do not fully appreciate. First, it increases their cost of development finance. Builders borrow money to fund construction, and that borrowing now costs 3 to 4 times what it did just 2 years ago. A development that made financial sense with borrowing at 2% becomes marginal or loss-making when borrowing costs 5 or 6%. Second, higher interest rates crush buyer demand. When mortgage rates double, the number of people who can afford new build properties collapses. Builders look at their sales offices and see fewer visitors, fewer reservations, and more cancellations. Why would they accelerate construction when the buyers have disappeared? The second major factor keeping land idle is the collapse in house prices and the uncertainty about where prices are heading. Since the peak in late 2022, house prices across the UK have fallen by 10 to 15% in real terms. In some areas and some segments, the falls have been even steeper. New build properties have been particularly affected because they traditionally carry a premium over existing homes, and that premium becomes harder to sustain when the overall market is falling. Builders are caught in a difficult position. They bought much of their land during the boom years when prices were high and rising. The prices they paid for land reflected expectations of selling completed homes at premium prices. Now those assumptions look wildly optimistic. If they build and sell today, many developments would generate lower margins than planned, or potentially even losses. The logical business response is to wait, hold the land, delay construction, hope that prices recover before they need to build. The accountants call it capital preservation. Critics call it hoarding homes while families suffer. The third factor driving land banking is the construction cost crisis that has made building far more expensive than anyone anticipated. The cost of materials, labour, and everything else that goes into building a home has increased dramatically over the past 3 years. Bricks, timber, concrete, steel, insulation, windows, roofing. Everything costs significantly more than it did in 2021. Labour costs have risen even faster as skilled workers have become increasingly scarce. Brexit reduced the pool of available construction workers. An ageing workforce means more retirements than new entrants. Competition for skilled trades has pushed wages up by 30 to 40% in many areas. Builders now face a painful calculation. build today with current high costs and sell into a weak market at reduced prices. Or wait on the sidelines hoping costs moderate and prices recover. Most are choosing to wait. The land sits there accumulating value while construction activity grinds to a near halt. The fourth reason builders prefer sitting on land to building on it relates to how the stock market and investors value house building companies. This is something most people outside the industry do not understand, but it is absolutely crucial to explaining builder behaviour. House building companies are valued based on their assets, and land is their primary asset. When a builder holds land, that land appears on their balance sheet at its current value. If they build on that land and sell the completed homes at a loss or reduced margin, it actually destroys shareholder value. The perverse incentive is that not building can be better for share prices than building. Investors would rather see companies sitting on valuable land banks than see them constructing homes at thin margins or losses. Chief executives answer to shareholders and boards of directors. If holding land protects the share price while building destroys value, the decision is straightforward from a corporate perspective, even if it is devastating from a housing perspective. The fifth factor encouraging land banking is the option value of waiting. Land with planning permission does not expire immediately. Permissions typically last 3 to 5 years and can often be extended or renewed. From the builder perspective, holding land is like holding an option on the future housing market. If prices recover and costs moderate, they can build at attractive margins. If conditions remain difficult, they can continue waiting. If things get much worse, they still own valuable land that can eventually be monetized. The downside of waiting is relatively limited. The land costs money to hold through financing costs and opportunity costs, but these are manageable for well-capitalized companies. The upside of waiting could be significant if market conditions improve. Compare this to the risk of building now. If they build and market conditions worsen further, they could face significant losses. Unsold stock sitting on developments, pressure to cut prices, write-downs on land values. From a risk management perspective, waiting makes sense even though it fails society. The sixth factor that encourages builders to sit on land rather than build is the planning system dysfunction that creates artificial scarcity. This might seem counterintuitive, since I'm talking about land that already has permission, but here is the crucial point. Builders know that planning permission is difficult and time-consuming to obtain. Once they have it, that permission has significant value precisely because it is hard to replicate. If they build out their permitted land quickly, they would need to replace it with new permissions, and that process is expensive, uncertain, and time-consuming. By building slowly, they can maintain their land banks without constantly fighting planning battles. They can be selective about which permissions they pursue. They can focus their planning resources on the best sites while holding existing permissions for the future. The dysfunction of the planning system actually rewards slow building because it makes permissions so valuable that using them becomes a strategic decision rather than an obvious action. The seventh factor is the consolidation of the house building industry, which has reduced competitive pressure to build. Over the past 2 decades, the UK house building industry has consolidated significantly. A handful of large national builders now dominate the market. Thousands of smaller regional builders have disappeared through consolidation, bankruptcy, or exit from the industry. This matters because in a competitive market, builders would face pressure to construct homes quickly to generate revenue and capture market share. If one builder slowed down, others would step in to meet demand. But in a consolidated market with a few major players, there is less pressure to compete aggressively. All the major builders face similar economic pressures. All of them can see that building rapidly in current conditions would destroy margins. There is an unspoken understanding that restraint serves everyone's interests. I am not suggesting illegal collusion. I am describing the natural dynamics of an oligopolistic market, where everyone can see that flooding the market with new homes would hurt everyone's profits. The eighth factor, influencing builder behaviour, is the government policy environment, which has failed to create meaningful incentives for construction. Despite endless political rhetoric about building more homes, actual government policy has done little to encourage construction in current market conditions. There is no meaningful penalty for holding land without building. There is no substantive reward for building quickly. Planning reform has stalled. Infrastructure investment has disappointed. Help to Buy, which previously subsidised new build purchases, has ended. Builders look at the policy environment and see no reason to change their behaviour. If government actually wanted more homes built, there are levers they could pull. Land value taxes that penalise holding without development. Use it or lose it. Planning permissions that expire without extension. Direct public sector house building that competes with private developers. Infrastructure investment that unlocks development sites. But none of these policies have been implemented at scale. Builders correctly conclude that government is not serious about forcing higher construction rates, so they continue optimising for shareholder returns rather than social need. Let me explain what this all means for different groups trying to navigate the housing market. For first-time buyers hoping to purchase new build properties, the slowdown in construction has mixed implications. In the short term, reduced supply might support prices and make purchases seem urgent. But builders are also offering significant incentives to attract scarce buyers, things like contributions to deposits, mortgage subsidies, and included upgrades. If you are buying new build today, you have significant negotiating power. Use it. For existing homeowners, builder behaviour has limited direct impact on your property value. The broader market dynamics matter more than whether new construction accelerates or slows. Focus on your own financial position, your mortgage affordability, and your personal circumstances rather than trying to time builder activity. For investors and landlords, the construction slowdown means ongoing supply constraints in the rental market. This supports rents but also reflects the broader dysfunction that is making property investment increasingly challenging. Factor ongoing supply constraints into your long-term projections. For people waiting for affordable housing, whether to buy or rent, builder behaviour is deeply concerning. Every month that land sits undeveloped is another month of constrained supply, high prices, and limited options. The market is not going to solve this problem because the market is working exactly as designed. It is just designed to optimise for shareholder returns rather than housing provision. This is fundamentally a policy failure that requires political solutions. For construction workers and the building trades, the slowdown has serious employment implications. Fewer sites means fewer jobs. Skilled workers are leaving the industry for other sectors or other countries. When construction eventually does recover, there may not be enough workers available to deliver the homes needed. The industry is losing capacity that will take years to rebuild. The hard truth is that builder behaviour is entirely rational from a business perspective. These are public companies with fiduciary duties to shareholders. Sitting on land when building would destroy value is exactly what you would expect profit-maximising entities to do. The question is whether we as a society are willing to accept a system where housing delivery is entirely subject to private profit calculations. For decades, the assumption has been that if we grant planning permission and create demand through subsidies and easy credit, private builders will deliver the homes we need. The current situation proves this assumption wrong. When market conditions turn unfavourable, builders simply stop building. They hold their land and wait for better times. The homes do not get built and people continue suffering. Some countries address this through direct public sector house building. Government or government-backed entities build homes regardless of private market conditions. This provides counter-cyclical capacity, building more when private builders retreat, and moderates the boom-bust cycles that characterise purely market-driven housing provision. The UK used to do this. Council housing provided a significant share of new construction for decades, but that capacity has been deliberately dismantled, and there is no political appetite to rebuild it at meaningful scale. Looking forward, what changes might encourage builders to actually build on their land, rather than sitting on it? Several factors could shift the calculation. First, if interest rates fall significantly, both development finance and mortgage affordability would improve, making construction more attractive. Current market expectations suggest some rate reduction, but not a return to near zero rates that fueled the previous boom. Second, if construction costs moderate, margins would improve even at current prices. There are some signs of materials costs stabilising, but labour costs continue rising given ongoing shortages. Third, if house prices stabilise or recover, builder confidence would improve. This depends on broader economic conditions, employment levels, and mortgage availability. Fourth, if government policy changes to penalise land banking or reward construction, builder behaviour would adapt. but meaningful policy change seems unlikely in the current political environment. My honest assessment is that construction activity will remain subdued for the foreseeable future. Builders have little incentive to change behaviour. Market conditions remain challenging. Policy intervention is not coming. The land will continue sitting there while the housing crisis deepens. What can individuals do given this reality? If you are trying to buy a new build home, recognise that builders are desperate for sales and negotiate accordingly. Ask for incentives, upgrades, price reductions, and flexible terms. The list prices on new developments are increasingly fictional. Real transaction prices are significantly lower for those who push back. If you are waiting for prices to fall before buying, understand that supply constraints may limit any meaningful correction. Even if demand weakens further, restricted supply supports prices. Waiting for a crash may mean waiting forever while your life stays on hold. If you are concerned about housing policy and want change, engage with the political process. Write to your MP, support organisations campaigning for housing reform. Vote for candidates who prioritise genuine solutions over empty rhetoric. Individual market decisions cannot solve systemic policy failures. Only collective political action can change the rules that allow builders to sit on land while millions struggle to find homes. Let me summarise what we have covered today about why UK builders are sitting on land instead of building. The scale is enormous, with over 400,000 plots with planning permission sitting idle while housing need intensifies. The reasons are multiple, including interest rate increases, making development finance expensive, buyer demand, collapse from mortgage unaffordability, house price falls, creating margin pressure, construction cost inflation from materials and labour, stock market incentives that reward holding land over building, option value of waiting for better conditions, planning system dysfunction that makes permissions valuable, industry consolidation reducing competitive pressure, and government policy failure to create building incentives. The consequences are severe, with ongoing supply constraints, elevated prices, limited options for buyers and renters, and a deepening housing crisis with no resolution in sight. Different groups should respond accordingly, with buyers negotiating hard, homeowners focusing on their own finances, and everyone engaging with the political process to demand genuine policy solutions. The forecast is pessimistic, with construction likely remaining subdued until market conditions improve materially or policy changes fundamentally. Thank you for watching UK Property Info. I hope this investigation has given you insight into why builders behave as they do and what it means for the UK housing market. Share this video with anyone who needs to understand the truth.